After centuries of excruciatingly slow progress, agricultural advances over the past 75 years have been nothing short of astonishing. Dr. Norman Borlaug's Green Revolution employed plant breeding techniques that multiplied yields of important staple crops like wheat and corn. He saved, some people say, nearly 500 million people's lives. Since 1950, American farmers increased per acre corn yields an incredible 500%. Other crop yields rose by smaller but still amazing amounts. And it happened while farmers used less land, water, and fewer fertilizers and pesticides per ton of produce. Their exports helped slash global hunger and malnutrition even more. And meanwhile, despite supposed impacts from man-made climate change, farmers in Brazil, India, and other countries helped enjoy themselves much better harvests as well, record harvests in the recent years. This global success story has many roots, pun intended. Hybrid seeds combine valuable traits from different related plants. Biotech seeds protect crops against voracious insects and destructive viruses, while reducing water and pesticide demand. Scientists have even developed virus-resistant biotech cultivars to replace endangered papayas in Hawaii, cassava and bananas in Africa, and other plants. Nitrogen fertilizers, as Myron mentioned, synthesized from natural gas and atmospheric nitrogen, have joined phosphorus and potassium in supercharging our soils. Increased atmospheric carbon dioxide spurs plant growth and reduces water demands by plants even further. Long-lasting herbicides control weeds that would otherwise steal moisture and nutrients from the crops we're trying to grow. They also enable farmers to utilize no-till farming that avoids breaking up soils, reduces erosion, retains soil moisture, and preserves vital soil organisms. Technologies developed in Israel make it possible to grow an amazing array of crops in the Negev and Arava deserts, which receive just a fraction of the water that Arizona does every year. Desalination plants turn seawater into 80% of Israel's drinking water, dramatically reducing pressure on the Sea of Galilee, on man-made reservoirs, on groundwater supplies. Israelis then recycle 90% of their home, business, school, and hospital water for use in agriculture, where drip irrigation delivers precise amounts of water precisely where crops and other plants need it, minimizing evaporation. The Arava Institute runs a school where African, Asian, and Latin American students learn how low-water farming can work in their countries and how they can work across different religions and cultures. I've seen all of this from weeks spent in the Negev and Arava, visiting the school, planting and tending crops, harvesting lemons. I never knew lemon trees had such nasty thorns. And speaking with farmers, teachers, and students. And meanwhile, back in the USA, huge high-tech tractors use GPS systems, sensors, and other equipment to steer precise courses right across fields while constantly measuring soil composition and injecting just the right kinds and amounts of fertilizers, herbicides, and other products along with seeds to ensure optimal harvests. Just imagine the bounteous crops we'd all have for all of humanity if these technologies could spread across the globe. And farmers could take greater advantage of online libraries and programs that offer agricultural success tools to everyone. Two South African farmers explain how modern agricultural technologies changed their lives. Richard Sitole: "Now I don't have to buy chemical pesticides. With the old corn, I got 100 bags from my 37 acres. With BT corn, I get 1,000. Now I have money to buy better food and send my children and my grandchildren to school and even university." Betu Ogamede: By planting Bt cotton, I was able to build a house and give it a solar panel. I also bought a TV and fridge. My wife can buy healthy food, and we can afford to send the kids to school. Unfortunately, this progress is under assault by ill-advised or ill-intended, but very well-funded organizations that want to turn the green revolution into green tyranny, eco-imperialism, and even eco-racism, eco-apartheid, and global malnutrition. Their hatred of biotech crops is intense and well documented, but many also despise hybrid seeds. They want modern herbicides and insecticides banned in favor of natural alternatives, which are often toxic to bees, fish, other animals, and people, and have not been tested for residues on produce or long-term toxicity to humans. These agricultural anarchists also demand natural fertilizers, which typically provide a fraction of the nutrients that modern synthetic fertilizers do. They say people in Africa, Asia, Latin America should practice subsistence farming, which they prefer to call traditional farming, or agroecology, or food sovereignty, or the right to choose culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods based on indigenous agricultural knowledge and practices. Yeah, in plain English, agroecology is rabidly opposed to biotechnology, monoculture farming, non-organic fertilizers, chemical pesticides, and even mechanized farming and hybrid seeds. You can easily imagine how agroecologists would react if a farmer wanted to assert his or her food sovereignty, self-determination, and right to choose by wanting to plant biotech Bt crops. And actually, anyone opposing agroecology will almost certainly be vilified as a vile supporter of violence against women, land-grabbing corporations, mass expropriation of indigenous rights, and crimes against humanity. Another reality here is that the war on modern agriculture and global food security is based largely on fear-mongering about climate cataclysms caused by our use of fossil fuels and modern farming practices. At the very least, climate and farming activists want all farmers to practice organic farming, even though organic farms have much lower crop yields per acre. And that means we'd have to plow millions of additional acres of wildlife habitat and scenic land, marginal lands, to get the same amounts of food, but we'd pay far more for it. The same activists even block access to golden rice, which is an amazing biotech rice that could end vitamin A deficiency, blindness, and death among millions of malnourished children. They're also big on alternative protein, and they think Africa would be the perfect laboratory for testing new foods like crackers, muffins, meatloaves, and sausages made from lake flies. In fact, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, Science Magazine, and many other outfits extol the virtues of entomophagy, the clever progressive term for eating bugs instead of beef. They offer recipes and techniques for processing edible insects into what they call tasty products that can improve people's diets and livelihoods, create thriving local businesses, and even promote the inclusion of women. You'll be excited to know that bugs can have twice as much protein per pound as beef, and that grasshoppers, locusts, crickets, ants, and cicadas make great snacks, desserts, guacamole, and even entire meals. And that mealworms have an earthy flavor, very similar to mushrooms. They're excellent additions to brownies, and sauteed with a little salt, make protein-boosted potato chips. Yum, yum. So, who are these guys, these agriculture and nutrition anarchists and revolutionaries? Among the more prominent and nefarious are Greenpeace, Sierra Club, Earth Justice, Friends of the Earth, Pesticide Action Network, Center for Food Safety, La Via Campesina, which means the peasant way, and the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, all very nice sounding, very familiar names for the most part. Klaus Schwab and his World Economic Forum are also deeply committed to the radical and comprehensive transformation of the entire food system. That's their terms, not mine. This transformation is to include everything from reinventing farming and cattle ranching to reimagining how food is produced, processed, distributed, and consumed so as to emphasize availability, nutrition, and of course, sustainability. The WEF emphasizes the need for what it calls alternative proteins, bioidentical plant and whey proteins, cow-free dairy, fermentation, and innovations like bugs to burgers. I'm sure some of these WEF concepts are going to prove valuable and practical sometime in the future. But as with most of these agroecology and climate movement principles and ideologies, there's an overwhelming emphasis on top-down tyranny and bullying, and not a lot of room for actual debate, food sovereignty, self-determination, or a right to choose. Besides the UNFAO and WEF, the agroecology movement and hard green organizations that I just mentioned have the ideological, organizational, and financial backing of organizations like the U.S. Agency for International Development, the World Bank, and its Global Environment Facility, a number of EU agencies and Euro foundations, and a host of progressive and far-left foundations right here in the United States, like the Agroecology Fund, which is supervised and managed by the New Venture Fund and Arabella Advisors. Other backers include Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, the Swift Foundation, the Schmidt Family Foundation, that's the Google Schmidts, Packard and Ford Foundations, and of course the Ben and Jerry Foundation. We're clearly dealing with some serious money, endless millions of dollars for these campaigns, plus the immense power and influence that these government, financial, and activist organizations wield with the help of the media and academia. Alone or collectively, they must not be underestimated in this war to preserve modern agriculture and nutrition. Now, I really can't tell you where the agroecology ideologies are going or how far they might go or what kinds of resistance they might eventually encounter. But some countries, communities, and farmers are pushing back. Many simply do not want to be trapped in poverty, disease, and mud and thatch huts, an absence of educational opportunities for their children, and a future of back-breaking dawn-to-dusk labor in their little fields. When they go online on their cell phones, they see modern farming equipment and practices. They see wealth and health and homes and modern homes, leisure time, and other opportunities that accompany these practices. Many of them want their rightful share of that for themselves and their children. When they see the rapid economic development in China, India, and Indonesia, all of which are industrializing and modernizing with oil, gas, coal, cars, and tractors, they want a piece of that too. Rumblings of change have become undeniable in many countries that are intent on charting their own courses with fossil fuels as their foundation. They're rejecting this new toxic form of colonialism, ecological, agricultural, and energy colonialism. They're beginning to realize that humanity has faced climate fluctuations and extreme weather events throughout history and survived them, dealt with them, adapted to them. And they're less swayed by climate and agricultural scare stories. Most importantly, they're beginning to realize that humanity today has far greater wealth, far more knowledge, far better technologies and resources than did any previous generations. To suggest that we cannot adapt to and survive and recover from climate changes, droughts, floods, storms, and other calamities is simply absurd. And that's why more people are beginning to revolt. against suggestions that farmers should revert to or remain stuck in ancient farming practices and technologies to save the world from imagined and exaggerated man-made climate disasters. Many of them increasingly realize that this is all just eco-imperialism in its most destructive, intolerant, and lethal forms. South Africa's electricity minister very recently said his country will not be turned into a guinea pig for a worldwide Green New Deal. I hope that same attitude is applied by all developing countries against anarchists who would use Africans and other people as guinea pigs in global food, agricultural, and nutrition experiments. And we must do our part right here in this room to help them win this war. Countless lives and livelihoods depend on it. Thank you very much.